Two lawmakers on Capitol Hill are leading the charge to account for every hard-earned taxpayer dollar sent to China and Russia. Senator Joni Ernst and Congressman Mike Gallagher and OpenTheBooks.com have tracked 1.3 billion taxpayer dollars so far that's been sent in the past 5 years. Founder and CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski, joining us this morning with more on this investigation. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning, Jan.
So your auditors found $490 million paid to organizations in China, $870 million paid to entities in Russia. For what?
Well, here's the principle that our federal agencies should live by. We should not be borrowing money from China to pay China. But that's exactly what we found at OpenTheBooks.com, up to $500 million over the course of the past 5 years. And some of these payments were troubling. For example, $1.4 million that was supposed to go to domestic ag producers to put commodities in our national school lunch program actually went to Chinese agricultural exporters. We also found $6 million in Department of Defense infrastructure spending on key infrastructure for our servicemen and women so they can get their logistical supplies during a moment of crisis, and a Chinese IT contractor got that contract. In Russia, the amounts are 2 times larger, nearly $1 billion over the course of the past 5 years, $900 million. And we found troubling payments like 3 Russian contractors actually transport our intelligent and diplomatic confidential pouch. We found $24 million spent to a local Russian security firm to help secure and guard our embassy in Moscow, including upgrading the security system on that embassy. And we found that we've been lost in space with the Russians for, at least 2005. We've subsidized the Russian space program to the tune of over $4 billion.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me was this $4.2 million from Health and Human Services, including giving $750,000 to a state-run lab in Russia to put cats on treadmills. I mean, what's the purpose of this? Who should be responsible for this misuse of taxpayer funds, Adam?
Well, it's a subgrant through Georgia Tech University, $750,000 to actually pick apart the brains of cats, put electrodes on them, run those cats on treadmills. Critics have called this, and rightly so, barbaric and torture. And this grant was stopped, even though it was supposed to run through May of 2023. There are still 3 Russian labs receiving support, and there's 28 of those labs in China.
Yeah, what's worse is you say that this amount does not likely reflect even the total amount because federal agencies do not follow the trail of tax dollars to their final destination. Why is that?
So U.S. Senator Joni Ernst, she wrote a great fix to this. We had noticed when her auditors and our auditors at OpenTheBooks.com opened the books on federal spending, that only first-tier subgrants are actually tracked on the federal transparency websites. And that's what makes our oversight work possible. So she's got legislation to go to the 2nd tier and the 3rd tier. Here should be the principle: every dime online in real time, especially in the adversarial nations of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. And that's what this legislation would do. It would open the books.
Yeah, that legislation is called the TRACS Act, which stands for Tracking Receipts to Adversarial Countries for Knowledge of Spending, TRACS. What would this act require? What else, Adam?
So it would require the name, the purpose, the location, and the amount of the grant, the subgrant. And for example, the reason why it's important is the place in the world over the course of the past 3 years with the most scrutiny has been the Wuhan Institute of Virology. And during this process, this audit, we found new grant payments that had never been disclosed before into the Wuhan Institute, and some grants that we still don't know the amount or the purpose of the grant. This legislation would open it all up in the adversarial nations of Russia, China, and the rest.
Founder of OpenTheBooks.com, Adam Andrzejewski, always great to have you on and shed light on these investigations. We appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jen.